Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and so far on the channel we've covered just about every single class revamp for the patch 11.1 PTR, with only a handful of few left over. And one of those classes is Demon Hunters, which are going through not nearly as many changes as some of the other playstyles, though even though they're getting only a few changes, they are fairly sequential. Like Havoc Demon Hunters are looking to lose the mastery scaling, but also they're changing the movement-based talents, where potentially you may not have to play a movement-based build going forward in Season 2. And even the spec of Vengeance, while it's not getting too many changes either, we have seen quite a bit of popularity of Vengeance as a prime tank when it comes to some of the higher keys, at least over on the PTR testing, which may potentially spell good news for this class. That being said, if you are on PTR right now playing out and testing Demon Hunter, I heard that apparently a lot of bugs are still present with this class, so whatever damage numbers you're seeing right now, you may actually be seeing an undervalued version of this class, but once they fix some of those bugs, apparently this class has potential to shine going forward. So when you take a look at the numbers of Demon Hunters, don't look too closely at the actual tuning, because bugs are causing them to look weaker than they potentially could be. But with that being said, I do want to take a deeper look at all of the different revamps coming to this class either way. As always, if you guys want to see more regular class updates for the patch 11.1, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. So Demon Hunters, compared to some of the other classes, are not getting a lot of new changes. I guess there's still Death Knights and Rogues that are getting very minimal adjustments, but they are getting some new changes regarding their talent tree that is going to be impactful enough heading into the patch 11.1. Demon Hunter's performance and placement in Season 1 wasn't as good as players would have wanted to be. A lot of players wanted to be a little bit more popular, a little bit stronger, a little bit more meta, and I'm mainly wondering if the changes in 11.1 might be enough to potentially bring him towards the upfront a little bit, because they are pretty fun. They are very heavy on mobility, but they're also making some changes regarding that mobility-based gameplay that some players may actually enjoy heading forward into Season 2. But first, general changes. Their tier set gotta be one of those best. The Fell Reaver look with the shoulders, the helm, and the fact that it's armored compared to previous Demon Hunter sets, which are usually more exposed, which is part of like their thematic component. I'm a big fan of what they did here. Just the variety of it. It looks so good. This is the mythic version, I believe, and there should be a bunch of variations of this with different colors. With a base, a normal one getting that fell green, which looks absolutely amazing. But even some of the alternative colors don't look bad either. Then there's also the PvP components with purple for PvP Elite. This one does look really good. Besides this though, we also get some generalized changes for Demon Hunters. First things first, their ability of Imprison is now going to function a little bit more like all the other class CCs, or I guess this patch 11.1 they did some adjustment towards incapacitation effects, disorients, and even mostly incapacitation and disorients really. But Imprison now is going to break on damage threshold rather than immediately. So if let's say you have a, I don't think I can actually imprison, yeah, I can't imprison an actual train dummy, but if I had like an actual humanoid in front of me that doesn't have like 5 health, then doing damage to them, there's a chance that the CC will break up until a certain threshold. Once you do enough damage past a certain threshold, then it does break. This means that in PvE content and in PvP content, you can now imprison a little bit more reliably. So if an ally accidentally is mid-auto attack and you prison a target, or maybe they have just very base, very tiny bleeds on them, those bleeds are probably not going to break Imprison immediately, so it's actually going to have some staying power for a little bit. This is going to be nice on variety of different fronts, but definitely helps out when it comes to endgame. They also wanted to do a bit of rework for the ability of Spectral Sight. This is a unique Demon Hunter ability that allows them to see enemies through stealth, but also see enemies through physical barriers and walls. It's a very interesting ability that's a very unique thing to Demon Hunter, because thematically they trade out their sight for Spectral Sight so they can see demons and magic a little bit easier. This doesn't get a lot of use in dungeons and raids, except for like those one dungeon in Legion where you have to do this a bit of a mini game where you have to talk to different spies to get a lot of information, Court of Stars being the dungeon, and then once you get all the clues, you could use Spectral Sight and Demon Hunter to find the target immediately. Outside of that, it's mostly a PvP based ability. Still, either way, they are trying to rework Spectral Sight to make it more functional, which is, I think, really good. So the ability itself is going to be adjusted in a few ways. Now, the ability no longer is removed when you use ability. So now you can use Spectral Sight while using combat abilities, while using movement abilities, so it's going to be much easier if you look for stealthies to actually catch him and still have sight of them for a good bit of time, as long as the spectral sight ability lasts. So those rogues in PvP that always get away from you when they vanish, they're gonna have a hard time getting away from you while you have the ability up. And now you can use it to counter the enemies more regularly. It also no longer breaks to damage either, so you deal damage to the Demon Hunter doesn't prevent it. The only way to remove it is by crowd control, so if a rogue gouges the Demon Hunter or stuns you, blinds you, any other CC, or if like a class that can remove, because spectral sight becomes a magic debuff, if it can be removed by classes that can remove magic effects, like mages will spell steal. I don't think they can actually spell steal spectral sight, I think they just removes it, but like priests and shamans and a handful of other classes that can remove magic effects, they can remove it. So there's only like a couple of ways for you to remove the ability, but if they don't have any crowd control, you can actually use that spectral sight to see stealthies, and movement penalty of this ability has only been reduced. It still has a bit of a movement speed penalty because Demon Hunters generally are a quick class, but you can see kind of like my movement speed right now. And then when I use the ability, it does shift a little bit. I think the movement penalty right now is only 20%. I don't think it actually has it in any of the tooltips anywhere at the moment, but it's supposed to be only 20% penalty. Oh no, actually, because of the talent of Lost in Darkness, because I guess I probably should pick it up Infernal. No, actually I can't. Because I'm trying to get Will of Illidari, Demon Hunters do invest a point into Lost in Darkness, because 2 points into Infernal Armor is a little expensive. But with Lost in Darkness, they also buffed up this talent, which removes penalty for movement. Normally it's a 20% movement penalty, used to be 30, but with Lost in Darkness, it removes it completely and has the ability to last 5 seconds longer. So, or have a shorter cooldown rather. So they are at least trying to make Spectral Sight more of a functional ability that you're not necessarily going to use in open world content. At least I don't think so. Highly unlikely to use it in dungeons and raids, but in PvP against stealth classes like rogues constantly catching those resets away from you, it's going to be much harder for those classes to catch and get away from a demon hunter. And I think there it actually may have some impactful of a change that you are going to notice within PvP content specifically. So that to me is exciting to see when they add like little thematic class things in the game that are not necessarily consequential, but like, you know, how they gave marksmanship hunters recently the ability to regain their pet companion if they want to play with one. Little things like that, based on community feedback. I like things like that generally. Aside of this, though, we can move on to the hero talents, and we see a fairly sizable change towards Felskard with a Demon Surge ability. A very popular hero spec, a very powerful ability, but now it's going to have a soft cap of 8 targets. Previously, the explosions from Demon Surge were uncapped, so the more enemies you could pull, you did damage evenly to all of them, which was a ton, but now there's a soft cap of 8 targets, which does bring it down a little bit. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to find a bit of an evenness between Felskard and Eldraki Reaver, without necessarily buffing Eldraki, but I guess it's one way to try to even them out a little bit. Though there are also other things within Havoc Demon Hunter talent stream that may potentially make Felskard possibly less of a preferential pick going forward. But from there, we can actually move on to the Havoc Demon Hunter talent specific changes. Now, there's going to be a pretty big one. One of the capstones has been removed, which is any means necessary. This is a fairly consequential talent that was a huge portion of the overall damage and actually defined Demon Hunter playstyles to some degree. There are 2 talents that allow Demon Hunters to scale super well. One of them is being Know Your Enemy, where you gain critical strike damage equal to 80% of your critical strike chance. So stacking crit and critting more often means you do more damage. The other talent that allowed you to scale super well was a Mastery talent, which took a place right here, but it's no longer here. That was known to be Any Means Necessary, that allowed any non-chaos ability like fire damage, arcane damage, nature damage, any other type of damage to be dealt as chaos instead, which allowed your Mastery to further empower all of these damaging abilities. However, with the removal of the talent, Demon Hunters still retain some abilities that do pure fire damage that are losing out on this Mastery scaling, which is going to impact their gameplay. Things like your Fellblade, which is fire damage, no longer scales with your Mastery. Things like your Sigil of Flame, which is all fire damage, also no longer scales with Mastery. But also you have the Felskard playstyle. This playstyle, you would think is just pure chaos damage, but when you look at Demon Surge ability, it's actually counted as fire damage. Previously, with your Mastery and the talent of Any Means Necessary, Demon Surge now scaled with your Mastery, but now it doesn't. It just scales with, I think, Versatility and Critical Strike. So it's a little bit less good. It's a pretty big change for Demon Hunter in general. This is a pretty consequential adjustment that actually While it doesn't lock out a huge portion of your abilities, some abilities it actually does, and that is a little bit unfortunate. I mean, hey, even things like Immolation Aura is fire damage, and that's a fairly good bit of your overall damage with so many talents that can further empower Immolation Aura output, but now it no longer has that mastery scaling, which is going to put Demon Hunter in a bit of a weird spot in terms of what stats you're going to stack into, because previously you would just mastery crit, you didn't have to think about it. Now there's going to be a little bit more room and adjustment, but it's also going to devalue certain abilities that you never really thought too much about, but it's actually going to make them a little bit weaker. However, even though they are removing a fairly sizable talent for Demon Hunters, they do replace it with a new one, and that is a talent of Screaming Brutality. Blade Dance automatically triggers Throw Glaive on your primary target for 100% damage, and each slash of your Blade Dance has a 50% chance to throw a glaive at an enemy for 35% of the damage. So it brings back a Dragonflight, I believe, tier set as part of your capstone in place of any means necessary that allows a throw glaive build to shine. So now that your Blade Dance automatically throws glaives at 100%, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to press throw glaive more often, but it does allow you to invest more into the talents around the throw glaive ability, and actually previously would actually make Throw Glaive a bit of a higher priority ability because of all these different talents that could be combined into it above Chaos Strike. In Metamorphosis, Annihilate was one of the highest priority, but when out of Metamorphosis, Chaos Strike was actually less than Throw Glaive. So I wonder if that goes back to that same rotational priority with this talent. It's hard to tell if this talent is really going to be able to live up to the same means as any means necessary, but at least is a powerful, fairly strong tier set from previous expansions that is now being added as part of the class or spec talent tree that does have some synergy with the whole Throw Glaive playstyle that may potentially be fairly strong overall on its own. But only time will tell exactly how good this will be, as I'm sure there's going to be more tuning for Demon Hunters, because apparently right now the class itself is pretty bugged. A lot of the talents don't really work fully. So whatever you're playing Demon Hunter right now in PTR, you probably are not seeing the full version of this class in terms of its overall value and damage, but that is something to at least note as we head into further changes, because there are a few more. As they are changing the movement-based talents for Demon Hunters by quite a bit. Now, the two talents that they're changing is going to be Momentum as well as Inertia. Inertia is staying somewhat the same, but Momentum is now called Exergy. For a bit, I thought they were trying to say Energy and they just mistyped it, but no, Exergy is actually the name. So Exergy changes up to what Momentum was, with the talent reading Hunt and Vengeful Retreat. Now increase the damage by 5% for 20 seconds, and technically this buff can be maintained at all times. Because the ability of Vengeful Retreat has a 20-second cooldown, it means that every time you press the ability, that effect always grants you additional 5% damage every time you press it. And basically the way Vengeful Retreat works for Demon Hunters, you want to press it basically on cooldown so it lines up with other abilities. So ideally you always will have this buff up at all times. Now, the other ability is going to be Inertia, and that would change quite a bit. The Hunt and Vengeful Retreat now cause your next Fell Rush or Fell Blade to empower you, increasing the damage by 18%. So they're trying to take the same approach of using Vengeful Retreat to now prime your Inertia, instead of having you use, which changes because it no longer functions off of your Unbound Chaos. Where previously you would have to use the ability like Immolation Aura, which then would prime up your next Fell Rush, but now it only primes your ability after a Vengeful Retreat. But it also gives you a couple of different abilities that could proc it. Now you can either proc it with either a Fell Rush or a Fell Blade, which may make it a little bit easier if you want to save those Fell Rushes for mobility, but you want to bank up at least one Fell Blade in order to get the proc of Inertia in order to maximize your damage. That being said, the uptime of Inertia is going to change by quite a bit because of the way that this talent now controls how you end up getting that damage window, because you no longer get it through Unbound Chaos. This is most likely going to shift the talents a little bit, and I've seen some builds of Demon Hunter apparently trying to theorize that you might not even play too many mobility-based talents, or if you do, maybe Exergy might be a better option. Unbound Chaos also has been changed and now reads: the Hunt and Vengeful Retreat increase the damage of your next Fell Rush or Fell Blade by 300%, lasts for 12 seconds. So even the Unbound Chaos playstyle can change quite a bit. Now it only works off of Vengeful Retreat instead of off of every Immolation Aura, and works off of Hunt. So I guess you would have it at least there during your burst window, but I guess you'll use Hunt into Vengeful Retreat, so you'll get 2 uses out of it. And they were originally going to amp it in Blue Post by 500%, which seems like a pretty consequential change, but now it's down back to 300% only, which is only a little bit more than it is on Lie, which is 250%. So maybe that's part of the bugs of Demon Hunter right now. But yeah, if it was 500%, I think it would be a lot stronger of an ability, because when you take a look at the overall damage that I did with a Fell Rush, fully amped up about 846. This is without gear being scaled down, however. So 846 to everybody, that could be decent bit of damage, while Fell Blade would actually do about 1.8 million damage, so it becomes a much better button to use in pure single target. So now you kind of do want to have yourself not only just Fell Rush for AoE and single target damage, but now you can use Fell Blade instead, which changes the way that you would use Fell Blade a little bit for Havoc, which in some cases, if you're in pure single target encounter, this may actually leave you, if you're not using it pretty regularly, this may actually leave you Fell Rush charges to maneuver around, because the only combo you really need to use is Vengeful Retreat into a Fell Blade in order to get back into combat, and then you could rush around if you need that extra additional mobility, which may give you a little bit of a different overall feel in terms of how Demon Hunters may be able to utilize their mobility going forward. But there may be opportunity in the future that Demon Hunters may not even play those movement-based talents, and even if they do, it looks like maybe Exergy might be the play. What this means, if you're someone who doesn't really like playing Demon Hunter with this movement-based builds and movement-based talents, you're probably going to have an easier time adapting to this newer version of Demon Hunter. If you're someone who does enjoy this movement-based talents, then they are kind of simplifying some of that rotational gameplay with some of that movement to be very structured, so every time Vengeful Retreat, now you're primed for a decent bit of damage, whether you do it through Exergy or Inertia. But this at least opens up Demon Hunters to a little bit different type of minutia-based day-to-day gameplay, and potentially some changes going forward into Season 2. So if you're looking for something different, something new heading forward into Undermine, then maybe Demon Hunter might be decent if it's tuned correctly, of course. Aside of this, there's also another talent that changed by quite a bit, which is Cycle of Hatred. Activating I-Beam reduces the cooldown of your next I-Beam by 2.5 seconds, and this effect stacks up to 10 seconds maximum. Basically, the way this talent works is every time you I-Beam, you get a stack of Cycle of Hatred. For some reason, I got 2 stacks. I'm not really sure exactly why. And if I go into Metamorphosis now, I get a 3rd stack, so now the cooldown of the ability is reduced by 15 seconds. Where normally it has a 40-second cooldown, now it actually has a much shorter CD. And after you use I-Beam 4 times, then the cooldown of I-Beam is reduced down to roughly about 20 seconds or so. It's supposed to be exactly 20 seconds, but it's not doing it quite well. But what this allows you to do now is now you have a synergy between Vengeful Retreat into I-Beam on cooldown. So those two abilities now are a lot closer aligned together when it comes to using both of them within combat situations. So like we mentioned before, there are some synergies with your Vengeful Retreat into potentially things like Unbound Chaos, but also I-Beam, and also Essence Break, which you want to use during I-Beam ideally. But now you can go for Vengeful Retreat I-Beam combination, rush back into combat, use your combat damage and abilities, and now that synergizes every 20 seconds. So now it cycles where you get a 10% crit damage increase, which crit damage, or it also could be, or critical strike, not only increases your chances for crit, but now it also increases the damage of those crits as well. So now you have this like crit synergy combo with your I-Beam every 20 seconds. So you get to use I-Beam a lot more regularly. And this technically should give you more uses of your Metamorphosis. Now, technically you could combine it together with Shattered Destiny, which increases the duration of your demon form by 0.1 second per 12 Fury spent. And if you could just get a bunch of Fury out, you technically spend more time in demon form using all of your empowered abilities. I haven't seen a lot of builds that are fully committed into Shattered Destiny. I see a lot of builds going into Essence Break and then also Screaming Brutality with that Glaive Throw playstyle, especially as Eldraki in particular. But yeah, this talent is now a fairly bit of consequential as it creates a much more of this natural synergy for some of your baseline abilities, and it's a pretty interesting combination, to be honest. Like the fact that you can use I-Beam a lot more aggressively, it also works out pretty well, and it also benefits your new tier set, which we haven't talked about up until now. And that's going to be one of the other big components of the Demon Hunter in 11.1 is the new tier sets. And some of them are very passive, while others are very active. Old melee DPS are going to play around the playstyle of Winning Streak, where your abilities have a chance to activate a buff of Winning Streak, which is marked in this dice icon right here. Depending on the class, it has a different effect. For Havoc Demon Hunter, it will increase the damage of your Blade Dance and Chaos Strike by 3%, stacking up to 10 times. Blade Dance and Chaos Strike have a 50% chance to remove Winning Streak. with your Foresight, the winning streak buff proceeds. With the Foresight, your winning streak buff will persist for 7 more seconds after it is removed by Blade Dance or Chaos Strike, and entering Demon form will sacrifice all winning streak stacks, where it allows you to gain 1% critical strike chance per stack consumed, so up to possibly 10% more crit. Which 10% more crit, this allows you to heavily lean into this know your enemy crit based playstyle. And when you use more Metamorphosis and things like I-Beam, the proc Demonic do count as you enter Metamorphosis, so you're able to capitalize and start consuming those stacks fairly regularly, especially when you have this, I kind of lost my word now, but especially when you have this 20-second cooldown on I-Beam together with Eventual Retreat, that also gives you a crit window as well, which gives you more of this like more hyperactive hit and run playstyle with this tier set that could potentially allow you to play into Cycle of Hatred type of builds. And with changes to the Felskard and how it no longer has Master Skill with Demon Surge, maybe there's opportunity for Eldraki to be played. Eldraki is generally not a well-favored hero spec. In most cases, it's not as recommended as the other one with Felskard. But I wonder with all of these changes if having Demon Hunters might be heading into a different direction, which may be quite different. While the spec itself doesn't change too much, it still is all about setting up big damage combos and really diving into a target, big cleaves, massive output inside a Metamorphosis. But there may be some opportunity for less movement-based builds, so if you don't like this rapid movement of Demon Hunter, maybe that's something you could look into. There's a lot of glaive-based focus, so if you like that glaive-based playstyle, there might be something for you to lean into. With the glaive being a bigger focus, maybe Art of the Glaive could be very, very good, potentially, just because there's a lot more focus on this ability that could also proc automatically. And there's also more focus on this using I-Beam a lot more regularly, so it may spice up the playstyle of Demon Hunter. Time will tell exactly how the spec is going to perform, because like I said, it's pretty, what I heard is it's pretty bugged out. It's not really doing as much damage as it could be. And there's a lot of issues with it at the moment, but at least on paper, we can kind of see the direction they're taking this spec specifically. As for the spec of Vengeance, they've only got a handful of new changes, not that many overall though, but the ability of Demon Spike, for example, that's now going to have an 8-second duration instead of a 5-second duration, I believe, which is very, very good. It just overall increases the defenses in general. Then also Cycle of Binding, which is one of these talents. Here we go. Now is only going to proc from none of the other sigils. Used to be Sigil of Flame, or used to be any sigil you use reduces the cooldown of your sigils by 2 seconds, but now they changed it so only Sigil of Flame reduces the cooldown of other sigils by 5 seconds. So if you're playing into a big sigil-based gameplay like Illuminated Sigils, then you may be able to get a bit more cooldown reduction value. This does mean that you need to do a little bit less rotation with all your other sigils to overall have major cooldown reduction. Just using Fire Sigil on cooldown is probably going to be the play that allows you to wait and use those Silent Sigil, Fear Sigils, Chain Sigils when you need them, instead of like throwing them out in order just to put them on cooldown, even if you can't necessarily use them. But besides that, the only thing that have Vengeance in particular is getting that is new is their tier set, which is Luck of the Draw. All tanks get the same tier set where each time you take damage, you have a chance to cast Metamorphosis for 4 seconds as a Vengeance Demon Hunter and gain Luck of the Draw, which increases your damage dealt by 15%. Your Foresight is a bit different. Hunt has a high chance to refresh its cooldown when you gain Luck of the Draw, so the ability of Hunt you can use a little more aggressively. Now the 2 set on its own is actually pretty big because it grants you another opportunity to gain Metamorphosis. Now when you think about you getting a random proc of meta, you would think that when it does give you meta, you would be able to gain all of the buffs of your Felskard. As of this current build, however, that is not the case. So the tier set on its own sounded incredibly good. Random procs of Metamorphosis, maybe combined together with a bit of Felskard gameplay, that would have been very, very good. But as of this current build right now, that isn't an existing synergy, so it no longer is that great. It's now just an extra bit of defense plus a 50% more damage. Like, there was a good bit that Demon Hunters were thinking to themselves, like, I'm just going to run the 2 set, play Felskard, and I'll be just fine. I don't necessarily need the Hunt as part of my gameplay. But now with this set of changes, it looks like you probably are going to be using Hunt a little bit more aggressively. The Hunt itself does have some offensive, but also defensive properties for Vengeance Demon Hunter, which I think fits them thematically as this aggressive tank. With the Hunt dealing immediate chaos damage to the target, rooting you in place if they can be rooted, but also inflicting additional chaos damage over 6 seconds to all enemies, or at least 5 enemies in your path. The Pursuit invigorates your soul, healing you for a portion of the damage you deal with the Hunt for 20 seconds. which grants you quite a bit of additional self-healing. Not only do you get more damage, but also that aggressive self-healing, leech-based, heal-based playstyle, that could also be very, very good on its own. And it does seem like, at least when it comes to early testing for dungeons on the PTR, we are seeing a decent bit of Havoc, or rather Vengeance Demon Hunters within dungeons, which is a really, really, really good thing. If we're seeing a lot of a single class showing up, at least when it comes to M+ leaderboards, pushing some of the higher keys on PTR. PTR changes are by no means final, but it does seem like we've seen a healthy bit of Vengeance Demon Hunter representation, at least as of this moment. But as of right now, that is going to be literally everything happening to the class of Demon Hunter, at least as of right now, for the patch 11.1. But as always though, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching this update, and I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like. I would very much appreciate it. Also, join our Discord community where we're constantly posting about all the new stuff regarding patch 11.1 over on the PTR. Also, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.